All right, let's jump right into it. I have been promoting this guest for like a week now because I'm very excited about the conversation that we're about to have. Joining me on Section 1904 today for a fun and interesting conversation, undoubtedly, is Bill Hanstock. He is an Emmy-winning producer, screenwriter, editor, journalist. He has written a book about professional wrestling, I think specifically like the WWE or previously WWF. But he also covers all sorts of sports. We used to be coworkers at SB Nation. You still work at Vox Media, right?
I do. I work for SB Nation still.
Congratulations.
Once again.
Congratulations on holding that job down. Thing I was unable to do. If you listen to this conversation and you like it, you can go subscribe to Bill Hanstock's Super Secret Words Club, which, like us, used to be on Substack and is now on Ghost. I read it. I love it. At some point, I hope we have time to talk about our shared love of Taylor Swift, because I feel like that'll be interesting. You also wrote We Promised You a Great Main Event, which I read a few years ago, an unauthorized WWE history. I love that book. I've actually gone back and reread that book at one point. Specifically because I got into like an argument with someone about the screw job in Montreal, and I was like, wait, I remember Bill covered that like perfectly, and I had to go back and read it so that I can then go back into that argument. And I don't know if you know this, I've seen one of your movies. I didn't know you had all these movies, but I checked your IMDb, and you have written Megalodon the Frenzy, Arctic Apocalypse, Alien Predator, Five-Headed Shark Attack, The Fast and the Furious, Three-Headed Shark Attack, a bunch of them. The only one I've seen is Apocalypse Pompeii, which I thought was really fun. Like, just so much fun and entertaining to watch. And I saw it like almost 10 years ago. But I remember watching it because you were like proud of it on Twitter back when Twitter was Twitter. And I was like, I should check this out. And I was like, oh, this is really fun. And now that I know that you have these other ones, I'm probably going to go try and find those as well. But let's get into the meat of this, because I've been chomping at the bit to have this conversation. There's a bunch of different directions we can go, but I guess during WrestleMania, maybe slightly thereafter, day after, I think maybe it was the Monday, Pat McAfee did a show from Las Vegas, basically from WrestleMania, with like the WWE audience in the background, and then eventually they played a part in it, right? Mm-hmm. And my co-host Darren, who is currently probably on a nude beach in Spain, he kept sending it to me, going like, "What is this? Like, I don't follow wrestling. What is going on?" Like, he's like, "This is ESPN. Like, why is Paul Heyman taking shots at people and saying like you're gonna be deported because you have brown skin?" He's like, "What is this?" And so it has me trying to explain it to him has led me down this path of thinking that like the wrestling culture. And I'm going to put Trump as a part of this because he has been a part of wrestling culture in the past, right? Wrestling culture has like really screwed up how humans interact with each other. And I'm going to like come full circle and not blame wrestling for this, but like the idea that Paul Heyman can go on TV and seem completely serious when he says something terrible, but then like if anyone actually is like, wow, that guy's terrible, most people are like, no, he's a character. He's playing a character. He's trying to piss people off. That's his job. That's what he's getting paid for right now. And I feel like McAfee and some of the other sports media types have sort of taken this and run with it, where they're like, it doesn't matter what I say as long as it eviscerates some sort of an emotional response from you. Like that's what Pat McAfee thinks his job is. Not to be an analyst, but to get an emotional response from people. And sometimes he plays the heel, sometimes he brings on the heel, sometimes he plays the baby face, all of that. And then it just kind of crescendoed with the Shadur Sanders prank call during the draft. Mm-hmm. And I saw all sorts of conversations like, why would someone do this? And my explanation to myself in my head is not people are evil. It's that people have stopped understanding that the evil people on TV, whether it be on a TV show, a reality show, in wrestling, most of them are playing characters. They're being told, like, be the bad guy, do bad things. That's your job. Mm-hmm. And people are like, oh, I can do that. I can be a bad guy. I'll be a bad guy to Shadur Sanders and Trump. Like, I'm just going to bully people. And what are you going to do about it? Like, I'm kind of messing around, but I'm kind of serious. And so, like, the kayfabe of it all, like, how much do you see this as someone who works in sports media, but has followed wrestling for God knows how long? Do you agree with me that, like, this, like, making villains on TV has warped people's brains into becoming villains in real life?
I think it has less to do with the role that people are playing, whether it be a good guy or a bad guy or evil or good. I think it has a lot less to do with that, and it has a lot more to do with the overwhelming onslaught of access to the increasingly enshittified internet, like constantly being connected to the internet at all hours and overwhelmed with information. And I say information just to mean like data,
Yeah.
content. I think constantly being bombarded and overwhelmed with that has created the post, like where we're living in the post-truth era, as people like often like to refer to it.
Yeah.
And so in terms of like kayfabe or the pro wrestling aspect of this, it's come full circle because ever since Vince McMahon tried to globalize and monopolize the pro wrestling industry, he was a lot less interested in keeping kayfabe intact and keeping up the front that the contest was legitimate. Like even like I think it was 1989 or so that he like went to a Philadelphia court and said like, this is not a sport, this is entertainment. And he went on record as saying that just so that he wouldn't have to pay to have medical personnel at his events in that state.
And also they wouldn't have to deal with like the regulations of boxing, drug testing, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And that was like reported on, but it was in an era where it being reported on didn't move outside of a few states really. And when it did move outside of a few states, it was, I don't know, page 20 on the newspaper, or page 4 on the sports section of the newspaper in your local area. So people didn't actually hear about the fact that the promoter of the largest wrestling company in the world is in court saying this is not legitimate. This is not a legitimate contest.
Yeah.
And that same thing had been happening. You know, if you read The Fall Guys, which is chronicles wrestling from like the late 19th century to the 1930s or so. Like there was a cycle ever since pro wrestling began of like every like 5 or 10 or 15 years, there would be some guy who would be screwed over by a promoter. So he would go to the papers and say like, this is all rigged. This is all, and it would be a scandal for 6 months or a year, and gates would decline. And then everyone would forget about it because not everyone's going to have a newspaper in front of them all the time. Not everyone's going to hear about it on the radio, you know? And not everyone who goes to the events is going to hear that some guy talked to the newspapers and blew the lid off it and exposed it all as phony. But now you're in an era where it's far less important to tell the truth and it's far less important to be legitimate. The important thing is that people are paying attention, people are clicking, people are looking at you, people are echoing what you believe. And this is the slide that sports talk radio has been on forever is, you know, you just want to have a hot take and you just want, and like, you know, for whatever Skip Bayless has always been amazing at this. And so has Stephen A. Smith. Like they understand the game, like they understood the game. And I think at this point, Skip to a lesser extent than Stephen A., he's not necessarily like malicious when he does this. He's just trying to entertain. He's trying to
get attention.
Keep people tuned in. He's trying to get people coming back the next day because he's going to have a different guest on, or he's going to talk about a different sports story of the day. I think on the flip side of that, you have people like Jason Whitlock and Clay Travis and Outkick, who are specifically focused on like, how can I keep the worst people in the world salivating over what I have to say, and how can I piss off people who don't agree with whatever I'm trying to, whatever angle I'm trying to take. Like you have, like Outkick like specifically exists, and to a large extent Bleacher Report exists, to be like, fuck the normies, like fuck the, like not even the normies, like fuck the people who are, you know, whatever they believe woke is, like, because they think
that's where
that
Bleacher Report is gone. I haven't even paid attention. Like, Bleacher Report's owned by, like, Turner, right? Like, I assumed that they had just turned into a big business that was not picking sides.
Like 2 years ago, Portnoy bought it back. Because, like, they had a deal with ESPN, and then, like, Portnoy said some shit about, you know, women or something.
Wait,
you're
talking about Barstool.
I'm sorry.
You said Bleacher Report. I'm sorry. You said Bleacher Report. That's why I was confused. No, it's all right. It's all right.
Forget everything I said.
So Bleacher Report's fine.
Bleacher Report is great.
Sucks. Yeah, we know that. Yeah.
Go Bleacher Report. I'm very sorry. You might want to just go back in and drop me saying Barstool over Bleacher Report to start with, so that I don't mess that up. But yeah, sorry. It's people, you know. So we've gone full circle now, where now wrestling, it doesn't really matter whether it's real or not, because you're going to talk about it however you're going to talk about it. And now that it has been, wrestling also went through a weird period of time when like Jonathan Coachman was at ESPN, and they partnered with ESPN officially for like 18 months or something.
Yeah. And
they got a special segment at the end of every Sports Center where it's like, we're going to talk about pro wrestling now for 5 minutes. Yeah. Like I don't know. I don't remember if it might've been weekly, like whatever Sports Center that Coachman hosted, Primetime Sports Center. Weekly. They would have like 15 minutes at the end where they would have like Roman Reigns would come on for an interview, or Seth Rollins would come on for an interview. Like there was,
would they pretend it was real?
They would just do an interview. Like they wouldn't get into the reality of it or not. It was just like, there's a big WWE event coming up, and
got it.
Blah blah blah.
Promo. Like, it was a commercial.
Because like Sports Center covered like the result of WrestleMania 3. Like
I remember this as someone who used to, like, I did the same thing everyone else my age did, which is like I woke up in the morning and I turned on Sports Center, and then you'd watch it over and over again, like 3 or 4 different times. Yeah. But I was also a big wrestling fan, and I remember like after, it was usually WrestleMania, like specifically I remember the Dennis Rodman Karl Malone one, because it happened like I think during the NBA finals or the NBA playoffs, and then they met in the finals, like those two teams. Mm-hmm. And I remember like watching WrestleMania and then going to Sports Center, and Sports Center like covering it, but like they couldn't show any clips because it was a pay-per-view. So they would just show like stills while they talked about it, but they talked about it like it was real. Like, oh, like this person won the result of this one after this person came in, and there was, and that's why like it was so jarring to see Pat McAfee, who like we're supposed to take at face value, right? Like he's a person that we're supposed to trust. He's giving us honest opinions, right? And he's there doing like bits with like Paul Heyman, who's obviously in character. And I was like, I was thinking in my head, like if someone's watching this and they've never watched wrestling, which is kind of the category Darren's in, like they have no idea what's real and what's not here. They're just confused, and they're like, how's Paul Heyman allowed to say these things on ESPN? And it's like the line of what is true and what isn't is blurring, and like wrestling has always kind of been on the fringes of that, and like them just like McAfee inviting them onto the ESPN airwaves was just like, okay, now I don't know if I can trust what ESPN is showing or playing anymore. And it's just getting strange.
I don't know that in 2025 you're supposed to take Pat McAfee or any sports talk. No, let me finish the thought real quick. I don't know that you're supposed to take them at face value. I think that you're supposed to understand that this is an opinion that they have, but I think that that's different from taking someone at face value. But
like a real opinion, not like I'm making up this opinion to piss you off. Although I guess there's some of that too, right?
Like, so as far as like what Paul Heyman said, like at this point, WWE and UFC and their parent company TKO are really, really, really aggressively cozying up to the Trump administration,
Yeah.
to the point where Trump's coming, the sitting president of the United States is going to UFC events.
Yeah.
That you've got, the Secretary of Education going to fights and palling around with like Kid Rock and whoever's at the UFC fight. And you have media companies falling over themselves to try and ingratiate themselves to the current administration. And you have Fortune 500 CEOs openly celebrating in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, great, now I don't have to hire black people for jobs. Now I can say whatever I want in boardrooms. This is a golden era for white men again. So like that's what the thrust of this all is they're trying to the people in power are trying to aggressively court white men, and white men are predominantly who are watching ESPN. And it's just, you're going to see it more and more. You've already seen it a bunch. There's going to be constant line stepping of people going on TV and seeing what they can say and get away with. And they're not doing it. They're doing it to try and become heroes to the worst people in the world. And I think that in a lot of instances it's working. We're going to see what happens over the next, 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, however long Trump remains president, however long the Supreme Court remains, taking rights away from people. But you getting back to the post-truth era, post-kayfabe era is like the whole point of the entire right-wing apparatus of media, and like almost every newspaper, almost every news station, almost every cable company is owned by people who are aggressively right-wing, who are staunchly anti-left. Like the whole point of the cycle that Fox News kicked off is to move past like, what if we don't tell the truth? What if we tell people what they want to hear instead of telling them the truth, or we put a slant on things? And that combined with the instant access to whatever opinion, whatever factoid you want to find at the drop of a hat to support what you believe, has led to a systematic diminishing of elites in society. And like before, like when you and I grew up, like we got all of our information from the newspaper where journalists were objective, from our teachers in school. And like we had there were other professors who put out books like Lies My Teacher Taught Me, and Howard Zinn put out People's History of the United States. And like once you got into college, you learned, hey, maybe the world's a little bit broader than what I saw. But at the same time, it was still the elite professors telling you what you hadn't been told your whole life. It was college elites telling you, now that you're in college, we can entrust you with a little bit more information of what the world is about. It was, hey, now I can seek out the books I want to seek out. Now I can seek out the media I want to seek out. But it was still a structure of elites saying like, we're trusted, we're verified, here's our peer reviews, here's science to back up everything, here's studies and like stress testing that we've done to prove everything, that we're like, here's hard science, here's reasons why the world is round, here's reasons why space exists, here's reasons why the earth isn't hollow. And I mean, when I was growing up, I grew up in a Christian structure.
Right.
So like at the same time that all of that was happening, there were still books like The Missing Link, where it's like, here's a book that proves why evolution didn't actually happen the way that scientists say it did. And there were people saying like, oh, did you hear that they found a recording of hell? They put a microphone in a really deep hole and they've heard what hell sounds like, and hell's actually in the middle of the earth. And I knew someone whose relative was a Christian cryptid hunter. Like he went to jungles and like looked for dinosaurs to prove that evolution didn't exist because dinosaurs still exist and there's been sightings of dinosaurs.
Is he like the opposite of Indiana Jones?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. It doesn't belong in a museum. But so there's always been fringes. There's always been like Coast to Coast or whatever that radio show is, like the UFO radio show.
I think it is called Coast to Coast. Yeah.
Yeah. That ran for like 30 years, you know, like there's always been like that Mel Gibson movie Conspiracy Theory. Like there's always been people on the fringes being like, we didn't land on the moon. We didn't blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But it was always like, if you had a crazy theory, either that theory wasn't given the light of day, or you had to really seek out other people who were interested in the same things as you, or you had to stumble into like, oh, there was a guy at a flea market who had this crazy book and I found the book and now there's some crazy stuff I'm hearing about that I don't know if is real or not. So that used to be the situation. Now it's just you open up Facebook and there's some AI thing pushing to you like 15 facts that prove that fossil fuels don't exist or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, whatever the case may be, you know, and like the president of the United States can say whatever he wants with absolutely no facts to back it up. The people who are in power can ignore laws as they see fit, and that's always been the case. But it used to be that the people who wielded the power of truth were people who had to go through rigorous testing or accreditation to say like, you can trust me, and if you don't trust me, here are all my references, all my sources, and all of these come from accredited peer-reviewed works that you can, you know, there was a body of evidence to back up what I have to say. And now it's just anyone can say anything at any time, and whoever reads that can just say, that seems like it checks out to me. Yeah. And there's no checking of anything. So a very long-winded way, that's because that's the only way I say anything, a very long-winded way to say that like it really doesn't matter what wrestling is at this point, because all that matters is if they get on television, what do they get to say?
Yeah, it's like, you know, they believe that the attention pie is finite, right? And they have to steal it from everyone else. And they're like, I will say or do anything to steal my, you know, the largest share of attention possible. And like being in sports media as long as I have, it's very easy to see that like what gets the most attention, unfortunately, is like the shit that we didn't really used to talk about at all, which is the transactions, right? And it's like, ESPN for so long was a news organization that offered sports analysis. And then they got rid of like news reporters who would break stories and good analysts like Zach Lowe to make room for someone like Pat McAfee, who doesn't really offer any of either, but will get out there every day and be like, this person should be traded. This person should demand a trade. This person should sign here. And it becomes this weird thing where people build this dream in their head of like what their team should do, right? I know how to fix my team. Sure. And if the GM of my team does something else, I'm going to be mad at him because I know for a fact that is not going to work. Yeah. And the fact that the fans have gotten so into this, and like it's partially the team's fault too. Like anytime a decision is questioned by a team, you know, Nico Harrison trading Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers, the response back is like, we are doing what is in the best interest of the team to get wins. That's all we care about. At the end of the day, nothing matters except for wins and rings, and that's it. And how you feel, and good narratives, and offering analysis, or playing a certain style. None of that matters. All that matters is wins and rings. And there was, so after WrestleMania, I think like literally the night of the final night of WrestleMania, John Cena wins some sort of title with help from Travis Scott, who like celebrities running in WrestleMania and fucking with the results is, you know, a tale as old as time itself, right? So I'm not mad about that. But I found this rant, or Darren found this rant and sent it to me from this wrestling host, radio host on SiriusXM named Dave LaGreca. And he was ranting and raving about a bunch of things, but specifically he was really mad that like Travis Scott came in and helped John Cena win, and John Cena won. And actually, I can play this part because it makes me laugh every time. Just an all-time like response to someone being like, no, I want to see John Cena succeed. But his whole thing was that, oh, you spent a year building up Cody Rhodes, and then you just knocked down Cody Rhodes, and you made him look really weak just to put John Cena over with help from Travis Scott, and John Cena's leaving soon anyway. You've screwed up the rise of Cody Rhodes, and you've screwed up like who the champion should be and the transition over the next. And I was listening to this, and I'm like, at no point does he mention the wrestling. At no point.
Yeah.
And in sports, Darren and I talk a lot about how like people have stopped appreciating the performance. They only appreciate the result, right? Mm-hmm. And Darren's in Barcelona yesterday. He went to FC Barcelona versus Inter Milan. This didn't make it onto the podcast, but he was telling me like literally an hour ago that he wished he had brought this up. He said at the end of the match, everyone in the stadium, both sides, Barca fans and Inter Milan fans, gave a standing ovation to the players for playing such a fantastic game. Mm-hmm. And like that actually felt vaguely like wrestling to me. Like I'm a kid who grew up on like ECW and WCW, so like I would see those like Lucha Libre matches or like, you know, the Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit matchups where like at the end the fans would just like, they didn't even care who won. You don't even remember who wins, but you remember the match and you remember how good it was. And you remember that the stories they told through it, the moves they pulled off, the risks they took were all just so magical, and the fans really genuinely appreciated that. Is that gone in wrestling too? Because it's definitely gone in sports. Like people don't even care about the games anymore. They don't care about like a better understanding of the games. They don't care about like why a team won. It's simply, did my team win? Yes, I'm happy. Did my team lose? No, I'm mad, and I'm going to start talking about like who needs to be traded or signed to get my team to a place where it wins. Like, is wrestling still just like, is wrestling as result focused as sports has become, or is there still an appreciation of like the performance in there somewhere?
Well, I think pro wrestling has always been insanely results driven, especially as it pertains to WWE, because, you know, all growing up, no one cared about work rate. You know, kids, like in my youth, there was no like, apart from the rare moments when a WWF match was extremely, like you could tell was just good. And I think the first WWF match that I ever watched that I recognized, like, this is a great match, I think that was Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam. Yeah. I think that was the first time I was like, wow, that match, the match itself. If it wasn't that, it was probably Hogan versus Warrior at WrestleMania 6, where the match itself was like rehearsed and constructed to specifically be this epic match that people would remember. Yeah. And they did a good job of it. Especially in WWF, where it was never treated as a sport in the way that Jim Crockett Promotions, NWA, WCW did. It wasn't Southern wrestling. It wasn't about like, this guy is fighting this guy to see who's the best pro wrestler. It was, this guy attacked me at my wedding reception and bit me with a cobra, so I'm going to get revenge on him. Like that, like that's truly the difference. Is like Dusty Rhodes was like getting beaten up by the Four Horsemen and getting his arm broken in a parking lot, and at WWF, like Ultimate Warrior was getting locked in a coffin. Yeah. Like that was the difference.
It was a spectacle. It was a spectacle.
And so it was so like the kids at my school, because I started becoming a wrestling fan in grade school, and I found other wrestling fans in grade school. No one that I knew cared about what the match was like or whether it was good or bad. It was, did the person I want to win the match? And that's how wrestling has always been set up, is the babyface goes over at the end. Like, you can have a long feud and the heel can get some cheap wins, but at the end of the day, the babyface has to win to send the fans home happy. That's the basis of pro wrestling. That's like the foundation of what pro wrestling is all about. That's what makes pro wrestling different from sports, is the result. Like, did superstar Billy Graham get beaten?
Actually,
did
wait. Can I
Bruno
stop you right
Sammartino
there?
win? Yeah.
I want to stop you because you said like that's kind of the essence of what wrestling is. Like maybe I'm too, I don't know, optimistic in people. My favorite thing about pro wrestling was that, and the wrestling programs often hate this, but the fans were in charge. Like the baby, they could make the babyface win against the heel, but like sometimes the fans will just cheer the heel anyway and boo the babyface because they're like, we don't like that guy. Right. And eventually like the wrestling promotion would have to like switch to be in line with the fans to take advantage of like the bumps in it because otherwise it throws off the whole vibe, right? And so like I've always felt like it was democratic, like the fans could kind of lead the story where they wanted it to go.
I mean, to a certain extent, and whenever Vince McMahon was involved, like to a very limited extent. But
yeah,
the reason pro wrestling exists is because legitimate sport is way too hard to control the result and almost impossible to control the result a lot of the time. Yeah. So that's why pro wrestling exists, is so you have control of the result. So the very essence of pro wrestling is results oriented. Like that's the reason there is pro wrestling, is so that you can get the result you want. Whether that's the good guy or the bad guy winning, you're controlling the result. And that's ultimately what people are going to discuss. Like until very recently, unless you were a huge fan of Japanese pro wrestling or a member of the DVD-VR message board, like you weren't talking about how good is this match? How many stars is this match? Like you were talking about, did Sting beat Hulk Hogan? You were talking about, was Bret Hart screwed or not? No one remembers the rest of the Montreal Screwjob match. They remember the end of the Montreal Screwjob match. And it doesn't matter how good of a match they were putting on at Survivor Series until the result happened. And granted, that's due in large part to what happened at the result. But you're talking about, what do people discuss when everything's over? And in the case of like Savage Steamboat at WrestleMania 3, people talk about what a good match it was. But that's like the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah.
And the reality of the situation is, at the end of the day, you and I and the people who watch AEW and the people who really care about the match itself and pro wrestling are the extreme minority of people who watch pro wrestling. And I wish to God I was just a normal person who could watch pro wrestling and be like, this is cool. I'm having a good time. Look at the spectacle. Like I really wish I could do that. And that to a large extent, like that frustration with everything about the entire pro wrestling business, and especially the nature of pro wrestling fandom, is why I don't watch wrestling anymore. Yeah. Like I keep up with the news, and I'll occasionally look up a match if I find it, you know, and up until this WrestleMania, I would make a point to always watch Rumble and WrestleMania every year, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But I didn't even, because it's just like, everything about WWE as a company right now is so despicable that I just didn't want to watch WrestleMania this year, even though like my favorite wrestler of all time was finally getting his main event. You know, I haven't watched any of WrestleMania except for like some clips that I've seen online. And it's the political climate, it's the product, but more than anything, it's wrestling fans, and it's the tribalism that has sprung up. Like the tribalism's always been there, but you know, for a lot of years there was no tribalism because WWE was the only game in town, and the people who didn't want to watch WWE went and watched ROH or watched PWG or watched the Indies or watched New Japan or whatever. Yeah. And since they weren't in direct competition with one another, there was very little like ride or die, like, no, you have to be an AEW fan or a WWE fan, or if you watch WWE, you're deficient somehow, or if you watch AEW, you care about spots instead of story, or whatever the talking point people may have. And everyone is right and everyone is wrong. And there's no invalid opinion about pro wrestling other than like personal attack type stuff, or like,
yeah,
or the fact that, or maybe the opinion of like, I can watch WWE and still not contribute to a authoritarian like regime or the enrichment of a company at the hands of Saudi Arabia or whatever you want to say. But it's just writing a book about pro wrestling and working in pro wrestling and writing about pro wrestling for 10 years or whatever. Just completely, I'm just so soured on the whole situation.
And that's fair. Like, you talked about the ties between, wrestling and UFC and the administration. You didn't even mention Linda McMahon. And we talked about wrestling kind of being the one of the original like blurs of lines where you're not really sure what's real and what's not. And like, even when it got to the point that the fans were like aware of how people maybe or should have acted backstage, we knew Vince McMahon was running the company, but he was also out there in the ring getting his head shaved, getting stunned by Stone Cold, and it was like, wait, is he really the CEO? Is he really mad about this? Or and like his son and his daughter getting involved in ways, and this popped up today, and this can be my transition, is because I was reading the kind of joint press release between the WWE and the San Diego Padres, what is his title now? CEO Eric Grupner, about how Survivor Series is coming to Petco Park, 40,000 seats Petco Park, next year, and is this year.
That's this year.
2025.
Fall, right?
Whoosh. And obviously that's a big deal. And the press release says like, hey, last year we did it in Rogers Center or something in Canada. Rogers Arena in Canada, and largest gate and event history, and I want you to get into that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to talk about that.
But it was funny because I'm reading it and it's like, okay, here are the quotes from Padres CEO, here's the quotes from San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria, and then here are the quotes from WWE Chief Content Officer Paul, quote unquote, Triple H, and then however you pronounce his last name,
Levesque. Yeah.
Levesque. And I was just like, that's a blurred line right there. It's like, I know that guy. I hate that guy. But that's not the guy that I know and hate. I know and hate the character. But now he's going by both, right? He's like, oh, I'm Paul, the businessman, but I'm also Triple H, so that you know who I am. And it's like, it's just so hard to exist in that world and understand what's true and what's not, that like, it feels so much like now when you're not sure, when you hear from someone or something, even a news like site or station or whatever, you're just like, I don't know if I fully believe that because, they're not giving me whole truths. It's blurred lines. Yeah. And it's just very disorienting. So you can talk.
And Triple H also is a very interesting component of truth or not truth because he was an extremely popular pro wrestler for a lot of his career, but he was really hated by a huge chunk of the wrestling fandom because he married the boss's daughter and got put on TV constantly. And like, there were like 3 or 4 or 5 years, I don't even remember how long, where it's like Triple H was just all of WWE. Like, you couldn't turn on WWE and not see Triple H. There was a stretch of time in Raw when his pre-time to play the game theme song would play like 4 or 5 times on every episode of Raw, and you'd keep coming out. And it was,
by the way, that song's like 30 years old by now.
Yeah.
Like Lemmy's crazy. Dead. Like, we can let it go.
But he spent, the back half of his career being really hated by a very vocal section of, very online fans. And then he took over NXT, and NXT prior to AEW coming on the scene was like, even the most like staunch WWE haters would be like, this is the good wrestling show on TV.
Right, because that was like, it was like minor league baseball, right? But for wrestling.
But they were like, these are the best performers, these are the best stories. He went through a run of like 7 or 8 years where he was signing just like every top talent off of the indies to put him in NXT. And then they would have a great run at NXT, get called up to WWE, and Vince didn't want to do anything with them.
Yeah.
So, but Triple H spent all that time in charge at NXT rehabilitating his image with wrestling fans to the point where he became beloved among a huge set of wrestling fans for being like the quote unquote champion of like quote unquote real pro wrestling. And then when he got an opportunity to be put in charge on WWE, it was taken from him, and then he had his heart attack, and he was only brought back to WWE after Vince was ousted. And now when he was put in charge after Vince left, those very online wrestling fans were like, oh, finally WWE is going to be worth watching. He's going to save WWE now. So that's become his legacy. And this year he went into the Hall of Fame by himself. Like, he had been in with DX already, but he was the headliner of this year's class of the Hall of Fame. And so now Paul Triple H Levesque is not only the guy who's doing the Vince role in WWE in terms of like the buck stops with him on creative decisions and what gets put on TV and who gets put on TV and how they're presented.
Yeah.
But he's now juggling this very complex legacy of who he is. And is he the guy who married the boss's daughter? Is he the guy who was always seen as an overrated pro wrestler? Was he the guy who's always been seen as an undeserving many time world champion? Is he the guy who has inflated his own career in the ring? Is he the guy who's inflated his own career out of the ring? Is he this extreme narcissist who kept putting himself in WWE WrestleMania main event spots long after everyone else thought that he should be in them? Is he the guy who tried to bring back true pro wrestling in NXT and revolutionize how WWE presented its pro wrestlers? Or, who is he? And I think that that's a question that, as is the case with most pro wrestlers, no one really knows the answer to. But now he's in a position where he's on press releases under both names, and
he's the only person from the WWE quoted in this press release. And this is his quote, by the way, which is absolutely not a quote. Fucking hate when they do quotes that are not a quote. Here's his only quote. For the first time in the event's nearly 40-year history, Survivor Series will take place in a stadium on November 29th, and we believe Petco Park in San Diego is the perfect host for a historic night. Like, he didn't say it. He didn't even write it. Someone just showed it to him like, hey, can we just say you said this? Sure. And it's like, I don't know, man. Lines are blurry. I
think that's going to be awesome, by the way. Like,
Survivor Series at Petco Park.
Yeah. Like, I love Petco. It's such a cool venue. I wish I could go to it more often. It's always cool when WWE does an outdoor arena show or stadium show. It's always cool to see what they do with the setup.
Yeah.
Even when I hate pro wrestling, I can acknowledge like, well, that looks so cool. That's such a cool visual. And I love looking at the stage every year. I love like seeing the setups. They've been doing a lot more of these, stadium shows, and then they did the Puerto Rico show.
Yeah.
And that was incredible. Like they know what they're doing, and they do it. They do it to the most they can do it. But are you going to try and go to that one of those Petco Survivor Series or not?
I don't know. I just I haven't really paid attention to wrestling in 20 years.
Yeah,
and so
it's not necessary.
I know. And that's why I might, but it's one of those things where it's like, how much do I want to pay to be there and like kind of not be in on the joke, like type of thing, or in on whatever is going on. I have a side question. This was not in my notes, but it's a side question. You say you don't really watch professional wrestling anymore, but obviously you encounter it here and there from time to time. And talking about lines blurring, are you familiar with someone named Shiloh Hill?
No.
So Shiloh Hill is a wrestler. I'm going to tell you how I am familiar with Shiloh Hill. Before I even knew his name, I was a follower of his on TikTok. And he... Stay with me on this. He is like a programmer. Like, he's really good, like, programmer, coder, like, really smart guy with a computer, right? And he was doing this series of, like, dangerous sites on the dark web and stuff you can do with them, but here's why you should avoid them, et cetera, et cetera. But if you want to go to the dark web, like, this is how to do it. And at one point, he encounters, like, an AI chatbot. And this is, like, early days of ChatGPT. He encounters an AI chatbot on the dark web and ends up, like... putting it on like a Raspberry Pi. Do you know what that is? Like just a mini computer chip, whatever. And attaching it to like a remote control car and giving it the controls and giving it like a speaker so it can talk, giving it a webcam so it can see. And like this thing ends up being like a pet that lives in its house. It's just this remote control thing, right? And then eventually it asked for him to take it fishing, so he took it fishing. Then it asked him to build it a body, so he built it like a body. Now they asked for him to the beast is what he always refers to this chatbot. The chatbot always refers to him as my child and all people as my children. He sounds like, you know, a villain from like a 1940s, you know, black and white movie. He's just like so over the top, the chatbot. And now he's got it in this baby's body. Like he literally got like a baby doll and put like the webcam on it, the speaker on it, and he's taking it places, right? So during the WrestleMania, he had it at Vegas. He was like, he made videos of him like walking it around on the strip, and people are like, what the hell's with the baby? And he's like, oh, it's this AI chatbot that I like took and I built into this baby's body. And for a really long time, I was like, I know enough about what he's saying to know that this is true. And then when he was like, oh, by the way, I'm also like, I think he was an NXT wrestler. I think he has since been on WWE a time or two. I don't know if he's a jobber, but I think he might be at that level, maybe cresting above that, partially because he's getting popular on TikTok for doing this shit. Right. And for a long time, I was like, this thing is 100% real, and it's creepy, and it's scary, and it's like, it's an example of how dangerous both the dark web and artificial intelligence can be. And now I'm like, it could all just be fake. He could just show up in WWE one day and all of a sudden the Beast shows up and it's an AI chatbot, but it's like a person wearing a robot's head and they like beat him up. And it's all just, you know, the joke of it all, the story of it all. And that's the thing about the blurred lines is like, you don't know what's real. And then even when you think something's real, it's almost impossible to believe in it because of that. Anyway, that was a side thing. You have any response to that?
Yeah, I think that I think the most important thing to do in a post-truth world is to try and determine how you're approaching what you're seeking to get out of what you're consuming. Because
if it's just entertainment.
Are you looking for something that reinforces your worldview or your beliefs? Like, then you should be cautious. Are you looking for something that's going to get you upset? Then you should understand that what you're watching is designed to get you upset.
Yeah.
But like when you're telling me about that, what immediately sprang to my mind was the robot trash can in Disneyland. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I was thinking of the one that Philadelphia like beat up and left on the side of the highway.
Oh yeah, no. So yeah, they killed it with hammers like E.T.
Yeah.
No, they don't have it anymore. But for at least 10 years, maybe 20 years, at Disneyland, occasionally you would encounter a living garbage can.
Oh my God. And
you can see videos of it on YouTube, but there was sort of like a garbage can that would like come up to like kids and people and be like, put garbage in me.
Yeah.
And it rolled around and you would put garbage in it. And the person who was controlling the garbage can was always extremely well hidden, and was just like dressed like a normal person watching the garbage can like everyone else.
This is what they do with like R2-D2 now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with like Lightning McQueen and Mater at California Adventure.
Okay.
But it's less. But with Lightning McQueen and Mater, it's like I'm here in Cars Land and I hope to meet Lightning McQueen and Mater.
Right.
With the garbage can, it was like something magical is happening. Like especially if you're a kid, you're like something magical is happening to me. Disneyland is a place where even a trash can can be alive.
Right.
And it's okay for a parent to be like, yes, isn't this crazy? Isn't this magical? This is amazing. This is going to be something we're going to remember forever. And that's okay because you're at Disneyland to be entertained and you're at Disneyland to have a magical place. And like, you can get into like the capitalism, consumer culture, evil company stuff all you want with Disney all day long.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, like, the garbage can thing isn't damaging because you're in a context of saying like, I'm here and I'm open. I'm not only here to be entertained and have a good time, but I'm here specifically because I'm open to the idea that something could amaze me. And having something amaze you by surprise is something that you're going to remember and cherish. And it's going to be something that's going to benefit you because you're going to say like, man, wasn't that funny when that thing happened to me? Or like, man, I remember that so fondly. as opposed to being like watching like Aaron Rodgers on Pat McAfee and being like, this guy sucks so bad, and he's here every week to talk about how much he sucks and how much he hates everyone. And like, what is that? What is the benefit of that? Not only to me, but to him and to Pat and to anyone. Like, the benefit is more people are watching the show because they're hate watching what Aaron Rodgers has to say. You know, like, that's the benefit.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't benefit you, the viewer, at all in any way, except to be like, I have another thing to tell my friend about the crazy stuff that Aaron Rodgers said.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I've already taken way too much of your time. I want to tell you, I want to give you a quick quiz. Sure. Literally a one question quiz, because you just mentioned this. And you were talking about, expectations and how much they tie into your enjoyment of things. And I wanted to tell you this very quick story about when I was a kid and I went to Disney World and I went on the scariest ride I've ever been on in my entire life. And it fucking scarred me. And it wasn't until many, many years later, I realized it was because, like, at Disney World, I felt safe. I was like, oh, nothing will ever get me here. I'm totally safe. Do you know the extraterrestrial alien encounter ride? Are you familiar with this?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it.
It was the scariest fucking thing. It was so scary. And like, I just Googled it so I could remember the name. And like, the first thing that pops up is a 25-minute video from someone called Disney Unpacked. That's called The Rise and Fall of Disney's Most Terrifying Attraction, right?
Nice.
And like, but it totally proves your point in the other way, right? And then I went there and I'm like, oh, it's going to be magical and happy. It's Disney. And I like went in and I'm like, oh, alien encounter. That'll be fun. And it was just terrifying. And I was like, nice. Disney doesn't do terrifying. And I think they got rid of it after a couple of years for that exact reason. Like, it was, you don't typically go to Disney to get terrified. That was the quiz that I never asked you the question of. It's fine. I'm gonna let you pick the last question. Actually, no, I'm just gonna pick. Okay. What's your favorite Taylor Swift album and why? Because you recently wrote on the I mean, it's not a sub, on your newsletter that you really love Taylor Swift. You've loved her for a very long time. Same. You perfectly encapsulated almost word for word what I typically tell people when they're like, why do you like Taylor Swift? And your whole thing about, like, she just makes me feel things, even things that I've never felt before, but they feel nostalgic to me. But I every time I bump into someone who's been a Taylor Swift fan for a long time, I love asking them what their favorite album is, because they're all just so different and strange. Yeah,
my favorite Taylor Swift album is Red.
Really?
Like, full stop. Yeah.
Really?
It came out at a time of my life when I guess that's the exact album I needed, and I think that that's probably true for a lot of Taylor fans.
Sure.
You encounter the album that you need, because I appreciated Taylor Swift prior to Red coming out.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. Well, hang on. Sorry. Did 1989 came out after Red, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So I knew Taylor Swift and I knew her singles, but I don't think I had ever listened to an album of hers all the way through before that. And it just was everything about Red, apart from I still hate the line, loving him was like driving a new Maserati down a one-way street.
Why?
It's not a good line. But everything about that album, like especially the first 10 tracks, is like I just needed it at the time, and it was still in an era when I could be like, well, my favorite Taylor Swift song of all time is All Too Well, and nobody knows about this song but me. You know, where you could fool yourself into like thinking that like, oh no, you know what? It turns out that everyone loves that song to death. But it's and I actually don't like. I was so excited when I found out there was a 10-minute version of it coming on Taylor's version, and I don't like the 10-minute version nearly as well, just because like
it drags.
Just because like no, I think it's really good. Yeah. I think selfishly, the original version of All Too Well, or the Taylor's version, the 5-minute cut of All Too Well.
Sure.
I'm able to put myself into that song because the original version of that song is so close to a lot of experiences that I've actually had.
Yeah.
And so that I can trick myself into thinking like this song is about my experiences. But the 10-minute version is filled with so many specifics to her and Jake Gyllenhaal's relationship.
Yeah.
That it's like, okay, this song is not about me.
Yeah.
And it's about her. And that's okay. That's still a good song. It just doesn't mean as much to me.
That's a great point.
Because now this song isn't about me anymore. Because that's the selfishness of loving that. But I think my top 5 Taylor albums at this point are Red is always, for the time being, Red is always going to be number 1. It's been number 1 for the past 13 years, and it'll stay that way until it doesn't remain that way anymore. But that 1989 Tortured Poets Department, and now I would have to say, before I had Speak Now and Lover, but now I'm going to have to say Folklore and Lover, because I've been listening to Folklore a lot since someone called me out on not having listened to Folklore enough when I put out my top 5, and I listened to it. I'm like, you're right. You're right. Because like the first time I heard Folklore, I was like, well, this is like obviously a masterpiece.
Yeah.
But I didn't spend enough time living in it to be like, this means so much to me. And I've spent a ton of time with Lover. I've spent a ton of time with Speak Now. So, but now like Folklore has easily bumped Speak Now out. So those are my top 5 right now.
Yeah. Folklore for me is the one that I like, my history lines up the best with. And so I feel myself in those songs. Yeah. So Folklore is really special to me. You didn't actually name my favorite album, so I'm just not even going to say it. I don't want to be embarrassed in front of you.
Evermore?
No. Do you not like Midnights? No one likes Midnights. I love Midnights.
I like Midnight. No, I do like Midnights. It's just not in my top 5. Like I like Midnights. I like I love Midnights. Actually, I love Reputation.
Yeah.
It's just like she's put out so much good music.
I know.
It's like
it's all good.
But with like Tortured Poets Department, like instantly when I put on Tortured Poets Department, like the first 5 songs, I was like, this is all me. Like this is like, she's so good at, like, I don't know if anyone's ever been better than her at being like, I'm going to evoke nostalgia in you.
Yeah. Simply
by listening to this song that has nothing to do with you. And it's all about my relationships and my stuff and my weirdness. And yet anyone who listens to her songs, which I think is the mark of like a true like pop like genius, is to be like, I always go back to like, because I like Kiss was a huge influence on me, and Kiss was like, I got really into Kiss in high school.
Yeah.
And one of the things that like, I don't know if any of the members of Kiss ever said it or if it was just critics who were writing about Kiss, like they understood the power of like, prior to Kiss, like rock and roll and pop was a lot about like an abstract idea of like you, but Kiss always saying like, I want to rock and roll all night. Like, I love it loud. Like, yeah.
I'm just like you. You feel these things too. It's
not just that, but like when you go to the concert or when you listen to it or when you're driving in your car and you sing it, you say like, I have this opinion.
Yeah, you're singing it with
I want to rock and roll all night. Like, and you're driving and you're singing it and you internalize that. And that's the power of that. And so like her having everything be like so personal and so first person and so specific to like an emotion or a feeling is so much more powerful than like trying to write a generalized pop song about like, don't we all want to party and have a good time? Like it's, and that's great too, but it doesn't mean as much when you're not as good at it as Taylor is, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Now you make me want to go watch Detroit Rock City, which I haven't watched in 15 years or whatever, but I remember being a great movie. All right, I told you it wasn't going to take an hour. It took an hour.
I always love talking to you, John.
Thank you anyway. It was wonderful. Hang on here just for a second so I can make sure all of your stuff uploads. But thank you so much. Everyone go subscribe to Bill's newsletter. Go buy his book. Go buy and watch his movies on whatever platform.
You don't have to do that last one.
Do it. It's fun. They're very enjoyable. All right. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.